and welcome back to the YouTube channel. Hi, just a quick little thing before I get into today's video. I need to let you know that this month I'll actually only be doing one video a week on Thursdays rather than 2 videos a week on Mondays and Thursdays. The reason for that is that I'm doing Camp NaNoWriMo this month, and unlike when I've done NaNoWriMo or Camp NaNoWriMo in the past, that's not really something that I planned for, so I didn't plan ahead on things like the YouTube channel, which means like when I've done it in the past, I've pre-filmed most of my videos for that month and had them all edited and ready to go, or at least, in the editing process, just needing finishing touches and whatnot. Whereas this time I'm just making them week to week or like about a week ahead the way that I normally do. So yeah, it's gonna be a little bit too busy to do both the intense writing stuff and 2 videos a week. However, once I'm done with Camp NaNoWriMo, there's going to be more videos than ever if you're at all interested in my second channel, because I'm actually writing video scripts this time. On my second channel, Classic Character Chronicles, I do videos where I tell stories from classic literature from the characters' points of view. So I pretend that I am the character telling their own story. And this month for Camp NaNoWriMo, I'm going to be doing a series of scripts retelling Dracula from the point of view of Mina Harker. So Dracula is written in epistolary novel format, which basically means it's written as a series of letters, diary entries, newspaper clippings, and so on that are theoretically, real evidence of something that happened. And all of those little fragments of story come together to form the narrative of the novel. So I figured that would be perfect for that channel, and what I'm actually going to do is release the videos on or around the dates when those things happened in the book, which is from May through November. So they'll be off and on throughout basically the rest of the year. That's probably not going to get me to my total word count goal, so what I'm doing is I'm writing 1 or 2 of those scripts each day and then also working on another writing project. But this is the main one that y'all will be seeing results from in the very near future, so stay tuned for that, and I hope that you enjoy it. And I'm sorry that I wasn't aware that I was going to be doing this in enough time to plan ahead and have videos for this month all lined up. But hopefully I'll still be able to talk about some good stuff, and it'll still be videos every week. I'm going to be talking about Sherlock Holmes, and then we'll go back to 2 videos a week in May. So anyway, here's the rest of this video. Hope you enjoy it, and I'll see y'all again real soon. On this channel, I talk about books and literature, and this month I'm talking about Sherlock Holmes. Specifically, my topic today is misconceptions about Sherlock Holmes, things that you might have seen in a movie or read online or just have kind of an idea of, because we often kind of have a vague idea about pop culture things in our minds, even if we've never actually read or watched the original work. So for instance, if you're at all familiar with Sherlock Holmes, you may have heard the name Moriarty. And you may know exactly who Moriarty is. The main villain, right? Well, actually, in the original stories, Moriarty is not the main villain. He is characterized as Sherlock Holmes' arch-nemesis, in that he is one of the few people who's on the same level or possibly even superior intellectually, and who can really give Holmes a run for his money. And Holmes also references dealings with him before that just are never actually told in story format. However, Moriarty very rarely appears in the original Sherlock Holmes stories. He's the main villain of the story The Final Problem, and he's indirectly involved in the story The Empty House, which is like the sequel to The Final Problem. He also appears in one of the 4 novels, The Valley of Fear. However, 1 novel out of 4 and 1.5 short stories out of 56, Moriarty has absolutely nothing to do with the vast majority of Sherlock Holmes stories. However, in adaptations, he's very often the main villain. So that's probably where the idea comes from. Although Moriarty is certainly a memorable character, and I can understand why so many adaptations choose to include him, it's kind of a shame, in my opinion, that other interesting Sherlock Holmes villains don't get the same attention. Another common misconception that you might have is that Irene Adler is Sherlock Holmes's love interest. She's actually not in the original. In fact, when he's narrating the story, Dr. Watson specifically says it was not that he felt any emotion akin to love for Irene Adler. So it's made very clear that whatever the nature of Holmes's feelings are, admiration and fascination and whatever, he's not in love with her. And she doesn't seem to have romantic feelings for him either. In fact, by the end of the story, she is married to someone else and has fled the country with him and seems to be very happy about that. So, where did we get the idea of Irene Adler as the woman that Sherlock Holmes was in love with? Once again, adaptations. There's a long list of adaptations that characterize Irene Adler as the woman that Sherlock Holmes was in love with. And while they don't often end up together, the romantic nature of their relationship is usually, well, it's invented because it wasn't in the original, but it's also usually very strongly emphasized. So the first two misconceptions that I talked about had to do with specific characters and their role in the story, but number 3 is a little bit broader. Misconception number 3, the Sherlock Holmes stories are murder mysteries. They often are. It's sort of the predecessor of the modern-day mystery genre, and many of the stories follow basically the same formula. There's a dead body, Holmes is called in to investigate, he brings Watson along with him, and by the end of the story they have caught the killer. However, they don't all follow that formula. In some of them, it's a completely different crime that's been committed, like kidnapping or blackmail or theft. And in some of them, there's been no crime committed at all, but he's brought in to deal with delicate political situations and stuff like that, just as an investigator. So even though we associate the idea of mystery with murder mystery nowadays, and it's pretty rare to find mysteries that aren't about murder, the Sherlock Holmes stories come before that was like the typical convention of the genre. And even though that's usually what they're about, it's not always. However, it would be a mistake to say that the Sherlock Holmes stories were the first murder mysteries, which is misconception number 4. People often talk about Sherlock Holmes like it's the earliest iteration of the detective genre or the mystery genre, but that's actually not the case. In fact, Edgar Allan Poe's The Murders in the Rue Morgue, a short story set in Paris, was written about 40 years before Sherlock Holmes' first adventure. In fact, in the first Sherlock Holmes novel, A Study in Scarlet, Holmes and Watson actually discuss Poe's detective character. Watson seems to think that it's a compliment to compare Holmes to him, and Holmes is horribly offended because he thinks he's much better. I'm actually currently reading The Murders in the Rue Morgue right now. I'll have finished it by the time this video goes up, and I'll be talking about it later this month, so stay tuned for that. And in the meantime, misconception number 5. The Sherlock Holmes stories are Victorian literature. Now, some of them are, but some of them are not. The Victorian era was actually a specific time period from 1837 to 1901, when Queen Victoria was on the throne. The era that followed, the Edwardian, lasted from 1901 to 1910, and was the reign of King Edward. Now, the first Sherlock Holmes story was published in the 1880s, so the early ones definitely are Victorian. However, the last one was published in the 1920s, so after the Edwardian era. And it might surprise you to know that the final collection of Sherlock Holmes short stories were all published after World War I. So it really spans a broad time period, and it would be incorrect to categorize it all as Victorian literature. Anyway, I hope that you enjoyed this video and found it to be interesting. If you want to see more from me, be sure to subscribe.